So anyway, here we are for the final assembly of the Vega, interior, exterior, and wheels. This is mostly for demonstration purposes. Actually, if you're going to use a model like this, there are all sorts of different ways you have to assemble or disassemble it. For Redline, for example, I'd have to disassemble it, making the wheel model separate. But in any case, I'm going to put everything together as if I were going to render it in Blender. So here I've imported the OBJ model, or rather I just exported the OBJ. And I'm going to import the OBJ of the interior model into the exterior model. And as you'll see right away, that is not a perfect way to do it. It's just one way to do it. So it doesn't even appear at first. You say, why is that? Well, you have to deselect it, no object mode, which is very counterintuitive. But there it is. We have the complete Vega model, interior and exterior, even if you can't see them both at the same time in every situation. So the first flaw, of course, was that the edges of the back seat stuck out the rear windows, which kind of baffles me, because they didn't do that when I first tried to fit these. But the project has moved right along, and I've missed that important detail. So we've got to move the ends of the back seat, at least the top of the back seat, in a little bit so they're not sticking out the window. And it's a case of lining everything up just right. Checking everything just right here. So we will now save and export the new interior model, new and improved. I use these OBJ or wavefront files because they export and import in Blender much more easily even than Blender files. I have a lot of trouble on my computer getting my Blender installed to do that correctly. So rather than fighting with it, I just use wavefronts. They're also compatible with most game importers and exporters too, especially for Redline. For Redline, I think they're the only format that'll work. So they're handy in that way also. Very, very old file format though. And that might be why they work so well. So let's see how it looks. Import the new interior model, and the seats are no longer sticking out of the windows. One thing that I discovered also is that you have problems with this visibility, especially if you try to join the interior and exterior models. That might be why so many games model them separately, like Redline. So now I'm dealing with the lower edge of the interior model, which is sticking out the door there. That has to. Can't have them sticking out of the door, so we gotta move them in. This was very tedious and irritating, this whole thing. And actually, as you'll see in a later tutorial, one solution to this is simply to have a much simpler interior model. Some people believe that when you model, you should start with the least detailed thing possible and then add detail later. Right or wrong, I tend to go the opposite direction. I tend to go for a highly detailed model to begin with, and then I'm forced to reduce the detail as I make it compatible with this or that game. I might be thinking too much of photography, but that's just my way of doing things. I have been criticized for it. So here, one other thing I'm doing is taking the edge of the interior dish, if you will, and then connecting all the vertices to the side. I'm checking to make sure it's connected there. That's one way you can do it. Because a lot of importers and exporters don't like it if you have vertices along an edge that the vertices are not connected to. And you'll see in a later tutorial that I took this to a much greater extreme on a later version of this interior model, because indeed I have had to build other versions of this model for different games. For one thing, when I get around to doing the Street Rod 3 version of this, it's going to have an opening and closing hood at the very least, and an engine compartment and all of that, which will involve a lot more modeling than I've already done. The doors probably should open too. Again, that will mean quite a lot of work. Here I'm trying to smooth out the side at the very least. It seems like this is one way of dealing with this protrusion problem. But a lot of this was guesswork. I was really not happy with the way I had to just figure this out after the fact, but it's often that way in real life. You don't end up with perfection, so you have to adjust accordingly. Maybe I shouldn't even say real life, I'd say especially with computers. Computers will always be finicky. So, I see now it's protruding inward, which is not what I wanted at all. This is going to involve more tedious adjustment here. I try to smooth everything out as best I can. Taking that whole edge and moving it over a little. But that will not solve the protrusion out the door. So what do? You might ask. Well, I'll first export this, knowing full well that it's not going to be ideal. Probably won't work. And as you see, it will not. So I import the new interior model once again, and there it's still protruding. So what do? Well, I noticed that actually that side of the exterior model is concave, which it's not supposed to be, so that's the solution. You just fix the exterior model, and it matches the interior model. And there it is. So I have now a fully assembled Vega model. This will not work in every circumstance, but it is reasonably usable in this form. The normals look a little bit off there, but not the end of the world. Try to straighten my edges a little bit to improve that, but preparation of the model for export to one or another game would involve a little bit more adjustment than this. And of course, it may often involve a separate interior and exterior model. So assembled isn't necessarily what you always want. I will save this adjusted exterior model though, because clearly it's needed to be compatible with that interior model. But in any case, I'm running out of time on this video, so thanks for watching for all these months that I've been building this. And this will not be the last that you see of this model. Thanks again.